But my first question was, you said that if you put yourself for 1 second only in a feminist shoes, you'd be able to come to all of these conclusions and all of these reflections you did come to. But if we consider feminism for what it is, as in like the dictionary definition, like the whole equality, like political, social, and sexual equality of the sexes, why would you need to put yourself for 1 second in the shoes of a feminist? Are you not one?
Okay, it's a good question. It's actually a really good question. I like your contribution, and it's clear that you've been doing your own studies here in Queen Mary or in another place. I will say to you that, first of all, as Muslims, in the Quran, it says in chapter 41 of the Quran, Surah Al-Fussilat, it says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَى إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمَلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. It says, who is better in speech than the one who does good deeds? The one who is better in speech. In the Quran it says, who is better in speech than the one who does good deeds and who says, I'm one of the Muslims. So the way that Muslims are told and taught to identify themselves from a Quranic perspective is as Muslims, because Islam, we can guarantee, is something which comes from God. As for any of the Western philosophies or Eastern philosophies, we cannot guarantee that any of those have a full monopoly on the truth in that sense. So within feminism, as you kind of alluded to, there are different strands: radical feminists and Marxist feminists and liberal feminists. And for me to concede that I'm a feminist would in essence, in my view, mean that I would concede that I would take on board the cultural and academic tradition of the feminists, which I cannot do because of my objection to many of the things that feminists believe in, and I'll give you some examples. But having said that, moving forward, I do believe that there is a great deal of overlap between the Islamic tradition and the feminist tradition. And no doubt one of the main things is what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said in a hadith which is sahih, which is authentic, النساء شقائق الرجال, where he said that certainly women are equal to men. And this is something which is found in our tradition, and we do have exceptions to this rule, just like feminists have exceptions to this rule as well. So you'll find that feminists do believe in social, political and economic equality in the first instance, and they will see that there is a need at times to give women more rights than men. And clearly, if this is not done from a feministic perspective, then the patriarchy will no doubt persist. So the only way to deal with inequality is to enhance the inequality, in a sense, to enhance the inequality by positively discriminating for women, at least in the short term. And this would be what I would believe a contradiction, because if the premise is equality, and the prescription is inequality, then the premise has contradicted the prescription. And moreover, you'll find that in books like The Feminist Mystique, which was written in 1963, where the writer says in a very famous quote that she believes that the house or the household is a comfortable concentration camp. I believe this is an over-exaggeration and a melodramatization, and something which is unsubstantiated philosophically or psychologically or sociologically, no doubt, and no less scientifically. And you'll find that this kind of terminology does nothing but demean and degrade the status of women generally. It does nothing but demean and degrade the status of mothers who actually have to, for whatever social, political, or economic reason, sometimes stay at home and look after their children. So I don't necessarily subscribe to the feministic tradition because of its attack and onslaught in the first instance on mothers. And believe you me, in the Islamic tradition, there is a great emphasis on motherhood. In fact, mothers are more important than fathers. In fact, mothers are venerated in an incredible way. And so when a feminist writer comes, Brenda Friedman, and says that the house is a comfortable concentration camp, that is, for me, an offensive statement, because that is to suggest that the relationships that are built in the house, including a mother-son relationship, mother-daughter relationship, is also part of the torture And I would say that that is an offensive thing to do. And in fact, I will go one step further and say the majority of things a woman can do, of all the things a woman can do or a man can do, one of the best things they can do is become a parent and raise their children and do so honorably. And so when a mother is being compared to a Holocaust victim, really, think about that. A Holocaust victim, that's actually an offense to Holocaust victims in many ways. People that have really felt the sting of a concentration camp. So this kind of rhetoric steers me away from feminism and brings me closer to the fair-minded approach of Islam, which is a fair-minded approach which honors and venerates women, generally speaking, but doesn't go into extremes. And I'll tell you one more thing. Sorry, is there wrap it up? Yeah, okay, I'll tell you one more thing, which is an interesting thing. I feel that there are contradictions within the Western narrative, and I'll tell you where and how these contradictions lie. I believe that sometimes an atheistic woman with believing in a philosophical as well as a psychological Darwinism can also subscribe to feminism. Well, if you look at The Descent, written by Charles Darwin, a book that himself was one of the main seminal works that he wrote, no doubt Charles Darwin believed that men, and he said it as clearly as this, were superior to women. And he believed in his theory that men were superior to women because of women's ability to be more intuitive and all these kinds of data that he extrapolated. And you'll find that even till this day, you'll find evolutionists saying the same thing. So when an atheist, evolutionist, feminist comes forward and says, I subscribe to all three, I believe she is actually contradicting herself, because we were talking about evolution. In one way, if you think about evolution as a theory is a theory which actually says that two things are most important: a reproductive functionality and a survival functionality, and the second one is more important than the first, called the survival of the fittest. So if that is the case, the patriarchy is not an evidence against men. It would be an evidence for their superiority and their ability to subjugate women in the weaker position, because they are the fittest, and that would be a contradiction. So I think when a woman says that she is a feminist, she has to think twice, especially if she's living in the West, and especially if she's an atheist, and especially, and this is another point, if she believes in the theory of evolution psychologically and philosophically. I would say the best bet for a woman who wants to affirm, right, the equality of men and women is to do so using an objective reality, which can only be done if she subscribes to one of the moral traditions, because there's no objectivity in atheism. This is very well documented, very well understood. Look at the works of Nietzsche, Beyond Good and Evil, The Gay Science. Look at the works of Jacques Derrida. Look at the works of Bertrand Russell. Look at the works of even the new atheists, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. All of these people don't believe in an objective reality. Therefore, feminism is not grounded on a premise which is objective, which means it cannot be said to be completely true. Therefore, according to an atheistic feministic perspective, it makes more sense for a woman to be a feminist woman to look for a way that she can say objectively that men and women are equal. Because science is not helping her, according to Darwin, and atheism is not helping her, according to all of the postmodernist and atheist thinkers. She should be looking at Islam. Thank you very much.